What's it like to be a cop? These days we hear more and more on the news media about police officer-involved shootings. Law enforcement is really under attack by the news media in a lot of ways, and there are plenty of people who are fighting back. Today, I have a special guest, my dad, who was a law enforcement officer in Contra Costa County in California for many years. How many years total?
Almost 28 years.
28 years. I grew up in a law enforcement household, and I later became a prosecutor, as many of you know. So today on the AK Show, we're talking with my dad and law enforcement use of deadly force. This is Alex AK Kincaid. Welcome to the AK Show. So, what do you think about all the officer-involved shootings that have been on the news lately? Do you think the cops are getting a bad rap?
I think that most generally they are.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I think that if they were given the right to do what they need to do up front, instead of having to be so cautious about being sued over everything, that it would be a lot better to handle them in that situation than having to fight a lawsuit afterwards because they did something wrong.
Right. And do you know when cops can even shoot another person? Do you think they have less of a standard than you or me?
No, I think they are pretty much at the same standard that you and I are, even though they have to carry the badge and go into the scenes,
right,
which are dangerous, which I think is wrong. I think they need to have a little bit more authority to do that.
Well, and I think a lot of people think that if someone's running away, the cop can just shoot them.
No, that's not true.
Right. This is Alex AK Kincaid. Today we're speaking with Travis Brecken, my dad, and we're talking about the use of deadly force by law enforcement because we want to explain to you where the media is wrong and where the media is right. It seems that there is an overwhelming sense today that law enforcement are too easily pulling the trigger. I want to start out with a question because I was wondering, if you had the choice today to become a cop, do you think that you would do it again?
No, absolutely not.
Wow.
Because of the negative things that are going on, and where cops are always being attacked by the media.
Do you think that law enforcement deserve the rap that they're getting in the news?
No, absolutely not. The cops go out every day, they want to do their job, they want to help the public, and most of the time cops are, I want to say every day they're dealing with something negative. They're not dealing with a positive situation. When a cop gets called, it's usually negative.
Something bad has happened.
Something's bad has happened, and they're to respond, and they have to make a decision.
And that's what I saw when I was prosecuting early in my career for almost a decade. I worked side by side with the cops, and I wanted to do that in part because I grew up with you.
Right.
So my goal was, after law school, I wanted to be a prosecutor. I wanted to get the bad guy. And what I tell people nowadays is, if you think the cops are out there shooting people and going after people and too easily pulling the trigger, you need to go on a ride-along and you need to see what they deal with, because it is an eye-opening experience if you have never done it, especially in an inner city.
Exactly. In fact, I can relate a story that happened to me one time. A newspaper editor, actually a writer, wanted to go. She was doing crime scene investigation, mostly covering crime scenes in high crime rate areas, and she wanted to go on a ride along, and I was selected that she ride along with, and we were about an hour into the shift, and I got a call for 1199, officer needs help, which means everybody goes to assist that officer. And what had happened, this officer was trying to arrest somebody for assault with a deadly weapon, and he was by himself, and as he was trying to take the person into custody and get him to the car, he was attacked by about 15 or 20 juveniles and adults trying to take his prisoner away from him. Wow. So he called for help.
Yeah.
So I drove there. You know, everybody gets there as fast as we can, and we assisted him in getting the situation under control, and wound up probably taking, I want to say, 3 or 4 people to jail, totally, in addition to the suspect. And when I got back to the car, she said, "Take me back to the office. You guys are crazy." She says,
For doing the job
For
that you
doing
do?
the job you do. She says, I don't know
Right.
how you do this every day. She says, I do not know. I don't understand it. She says, you're nuts.
Yeah. And that's
She was scared. She was literally shaking. Shaking.
because you put on the badge, you put on your belt, you put on your uniform, you go to work, and you don't know if you're coming home at night. And
No.
you're dealing with people who don't care. And this is what I think is hard, because we teach classes to people about using deadly force and trying to negotiate out of a position. You have to understand that there are people who don't care what they do to you.
Oh,
They don't
no.
care if they go to prison.
No.
They want to accomplish what they want to accomplish, and they don't care about you.
And I will make a point here. Any officer, anyone that puts a uniform on when they go to work every day, and this is a good example of this, are that all the police officers have been shot and killed within the last year. If someone wants to kill you, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
They're going to do it. Not that they're going to get by with it, but they're going to do it because you're a target with that uniform on.
Well, and I always, so again, I go back to the eye-opening experience of doing a ride-along, and I also had the pleasure of working with officers who were serving search warrants and retrieving bodies, and I say pleasure because it was a learning experience for me, and it helped make me who I am today. Not that the experience itself
Right.
was pleasurable, but it is essential that people understand what the cops are dealing with every day, and they come usually when something really bad has happened. They can't be everywhere. We hear that all the time. People are arming themselves
Right.
because the cops can't be there ahead of time. They come when something bad has happened. So it's, I want people to understand what is inaccurate about the reporting in the media. And one of the things that has come up, I heard this on the news going home one night, two so-called legal experts were talking about when officers can use deadly force. And they were on a big primetime show, and one of the women said, well, if the suspect is running away. And I went, that was my reaction. I went, really? But that is what the mainstream media is reporting, that someone's running away, you can just shoot them. Well, okay, if you need to prevent them from harming another person,
Right.
There are circumstances where you can shoot a fleeing suspect, but what are the other inaccuracies, and what are some of the other things that you hear in the
Well,
media that people just need to be corrected and understand the
One
truth?
of the things that I always taught, I used to teach firearms, and one of the things I used to always bring up is, well, the officers knew this. They get this in when they go through the academy, is that you only use deadly force if your life is in danger or somebody else's life is in immediate danger. And you have what's called an escalation of force. In other
Right.
words, if you only use the force necessary to take the person into custody.
Right.
Right. And many times, that you get in a situation and things happen so fast that, say you're getting in a struggle with somebody and they're trying to get your gun out of your holster.
Right.
And that's happened. It's happened to me. It's happened, I would say, to any officer, where the suspect is trying to struggle to get your gun or another officer's gun away from you. Well, you don't shoot him. You try to, many times you have enough assistance there that you can take that person into custody
Yeah.
without using deadly force.
And that's always the goal,
There
when
you
you
go.
can predict that you need more
When
people
you
there.
can
Right.
predict. And sometimes you're by yourself and
Right.
you're on your own. So.
Right. And do you think the news media is correctly showing, do they show bits and pieces? I get that sense that they're not showing the whole picture with a lot of these stories.
They show bits and pieces, and it's totally twisted, in my opinion, what they're showing.
Because most cops don't want to unnecessarily harm other people.
They don't want to harm. Most of the cops, they want to get there and get the situation under control, and if there is a situation where there is someone with a gun or someone with a knife. See, there's another thing. I'll bring another example up. A person with a knife, there's a rule, it's called Rule of 21. We used to teach it. Anyone there with a knife, and he's within 21 feet of you,
Right.
and he can kill you
Within seconds.
within seconds,
Right.
or stab you, or hurt
Right.
you.
Right.
And so
And knives are deadly compared
knives
to guns.
are deadly. Knives are deadly.
Yeah.
And you think, well, it's got to be a big knife. No, it can be a little 2 or 3 inch knife. We've had examples of this shown in classes that I've gone to. A person that knows how to use a knife with a little 2 or 3 inch blade can lay you open. I mean,
Right.
and kill you. So.
Right.
Um,
So, I think, what we want people to understand is that while there are, of course, some shootings that would be inappropriate, I mean, in any profession, lawyers, dentists, cops, whatever you're talking about, there are some people who don't choose to do the right thing. But most of the time, law enforcement are doing the best they can, and those decisions are made so quickly that, when you hear things like, oh, the person didn't have a gun and the cop shot him. Well, what are you looking at? What makes you make that decision to shoot, and why might an officer actually take conduct and then in hindsight be able to say, I guess I didn't have to pull the trigger, but at the time I reasonably thought I had to?
Because things happen so fast. Like if a person's pointing a gun at you, you don't want to get killed.
Right.
And there's, as I was told many times, there's two people that can make a life or death situation, and that's a doctor and a police officer. Mm-hmm. The doctor has many years of experience, and he can contemplate or think about what he has to do to try to save a person's life. The police officer many times just has few seconds to make a decision, a life or death situation, whether he has to use deadly force or not.
Right.
And as I'll repeat it again, it's only in a defense to save his life or somebody else's life.
Right. So, standing with our men and women in blue who put their lives on the line for all of us each and every day, we thank you, and I hope that this show helps people understand that there are two sides to every story, and what the mainstream media portrays, especially in any officer-involved shooting, may not be completely accurate. This is Alex A.K. Kincaid, and thank you for watching the AK Show.